the last thing I wanted to talk about was this movie Babylon. So I had I had seen so a couple I'll say like 3 or 4 months ago, I watched these 5 short films on Amazon called Small Acts. And they were basically about the Windrush generation of Caribbeans that moved to the UK and their adjustment to life there and like different problems that they had dealing with people there. And it led me down a rabbit hole of like wanting to learn more about just the migration of different black communities all over the world and how it related to music and things like that. And so that's how I ended up finding the Black Jacobins book, which was about the um the Black Jacobins book, which was about the Haitian Revolution, which led me to wanting to learn about the Moors in Spain and how they affected like uh, Europe during that time period. But I also in one of the movies, they kept bringing up this phrase Babylon, and I don't know if you've heard this phrase in pop culture and media. Have you heard of just the word Babylon, like, being, like, sort of thrown around?
Not in that context, no.
Okay, so Babylon, I'm gonna give you some information about the movie and then why it's called that because I've heard Babylon somewhat frequently, but I just never knew what it meant and why people kept saying it, right? So the movie was about these Jamaican immigrants and their kids that moved over to to the UK. I'm gonna give you the synopsis because I think that'll do a better job explaining than I can. Okay, the story of Blue, a young man of Jamaican descent living in Brixton in 1980, as he hangs out with his friends, fronts a dub sound system, loses his job, struggles with family problems, and has his friendships tested by racism. And so I had heard about this movie, but it was banned in the US in 1980 for being too it said I couldn't find a real reason to why it was banned. Everywhere I kept saying, some people said it was too controversial, some people said it was too violent, so I didn't know what to expect when I watched the movie. So I watched it the other night, and bro, it wasn't even that crazy, which goes to show you, when you watch it, there's clear elements of racism in it, where it's like some of the names that the white people were calling the blacks in the movie, like they were calling them straight out monkeys, cows, like crazy stuff. And then there were situations where like white people were chasing black people down in the street, like I don't know, stuff that at the time you could see why people wouldn't want to depict you could see why white people wouldn't wanna depict themselves like that in theaters, like, why they would wanna ban the movie. But watching it today, bro, I'm like, it's so crazy that this stuff isn't even like how do I say this? It doesn't feel as a black person who's understood a decent amount of history, it doesn't seem like something that far off from what actually happened. You know what I mean? And so to watch the movie all the way through, at the end, I was like, "That's it? Like, that's all that that's what got it banned?" You know? I'm gonna watch it again, and I encourage you to watch it and anybody listening to watch it, but basically, Babylon is this overarching term that people use, um, to refer to and this is where it gets kinda tricky, bro. This is where it gets kinda tricky, so I'm gonna pick my words carefully. Let me find So the Babylonian Talmud is one of the original texts of the Jewish people, like the original text of the Jewish people. And in that text, there is anti Black rhetoric in it. This text is from 500 BC, right? And so if you look at the Nation of Islam and some of the radical Black people in this country, the the opposition they feel or have for Jewish people stems from this. A lot of it does. And so they refer to the essentially, I view it as they referring to the opposition of the black people or black race as Babylon, which is where the title of the movie comes from. And so I thought it was like this has sparked a new interest in me in that dynamic between blacks and Jews. Because you see a lot of stuff in the media, whether it's Kyrie Irving or Kanye West, referring to the relationship between black and Jewish people. And so to watch this movie, understand what Babylon is in reference of, and then the brief overview I got of this anti-black rhetoric, it makes me want to dive deeper into it and learn more about it. But I think it was interesting more towards this podcast is because the only real like places of community and like moments of peace in the movie the main character felt was with his friends at parties with the sound system. Like when they were playing reggae music, dub music, jungle music, like Jamaican music. You know what I mean? And I think that just in a lot of the ways that like I talk about music, like music has been a lot of black people's like safe haven. And in this movie, it's clear that that's what it is. And I definitely am going to come on here and discuss it more next week because I'm going to watch it again this week. But I think it's a good conversation starter. And if you have time, you can watch. You can now. It's no longer banned in the U.S. You can watch it on Amazon Prime. So if you have time, I look into it.
I'll definitely look into it. That does sound interesting, but I feel like I had posted this TikTok about like two black or white kids, two white or black kids, whatever. Like to me, it was basically like the identity black people have or the identity black people see for themselves. And I feel like because so much of our history is hidden from us and like not shown to us, things like that, like you said, that's not surprising that it was banned in the U.S. or banned because they wouldn't want to depict themselves as being that negative towards us because we always say that it's there, but they want to deny that it's there. So I feel like that's definitely something I want to watch, and that sounds interesting, honestly.
Yeah. To wrap this up, I was telling my friend about this in high school. I had a US history class, and in that class we were going back and talk and in there in one of the chapters, the teacher had brought up like the first black congressman.
Mhm.
And the year when she said it, the year seemed really, really late to me. The year see it was like 18, I think it was like 19 something. I don't even remember what the years were at this point. But in the textbook, it said something that in my mind felt too late, right? And so I remember going home and looking online to see and find like if this was actually true, like if the textbook was fact or fiction. And I remember finding out that the actual first black governor was like 30 years prior to what was in the textbook. And I'm like, yo, this was my first time dealing with a discrepancy in the textbook. And so I was like, let me take this to the teacher in class tomorrow and see what she says. Right. So we start reading again. And I remember like putting my hand up and telling her, like, hey, I know this is what you in the book said yesterday, but this is what I found online. And I found a couple other sources to back it up. And she was more irritated and sort of dismissive of me bringing up this fact than anything. Right. And that made me kind of mad. And it reminded me of, like, when here in Florida, they banned the AP African American classes. They were potentially trying to do something with the HBCUs and all that stuff. And personally, I have never really learned a lot about Black culture from school. So the the bands never really the bands never really bothered me in that way because it was like, y'all never taught me anything to begin with. But it's more of, like, misinformation as misinformation rather than a lack of information. Because you're not gonna give me the information, that's fine, as long as I can go look it up. But when they get to telling you things that aren't true is when I'm really bothered by it.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, like people say, it's if you watch the news, you're misinformed. If you don't watch the news, you're uninformed type of thing. Like I feel like they don't really
Yeah.
give us that information about us, so how would we know? And that I definitely feel like I agree with you on that, and not really bothered. Like I feel like even I think wasn't To Kill a Mockingbird banned for a while too, and then we had to read that in
Yeah.
school, like books like that even. Like
Yeah. I read a quote, that said, "If they're banning it, uh, run to it." It was something to that effect. If they're banning it, run to it and find out why they're banning it, like, for your own reasons, like, read it. And so that was why I was really interested to watch this movie and why I'm interested to read the books that they tell us they don't wanna read, they don't want us to read and stuff like that, and I think that's how you become more well developed, like, talking to some Black people now, they're like, "Bro, I feel like I don't understand our history at all." And I tell them, "I just feel like I'm starting to get a smidget of it in the last year or so."